I'd like to begin this video by demonstrating Sanchin Kata for you. By no means is this meant to be an exhaustive, in-depth look at the kata, but think of this as a reference guide and just something to review to confirm that you're practicing properly. I'll demonstrate it slowly so that we can talk about these pieces individually in later sections. So the first thing that I'd like to cover is the opening protocol for Sanchin Kata. Let's take it from the resting position that we typically use in class. It consists of 9 pieces when you begin from this position. The first is coming to the attention stance called musubidachi. This is done with the command to kyotsuke. We then bow, and then my left foot slides over into yoidachi, a neutral stance. As I do this, I make 2 fists in front of my body and I pull down towards the ground. You often hear the term rooting. I then withdraw my hands to the side of my waist. I step forward into a left Sanchin stance. I thrust out to the waist with both hands, squeeze tight, open up, and unpeel. Let me do that for you in regular speed. Here's a close-up of my lower body in the stances in Sanchin. Here's a close-up of my lower body in the stances in Sanchin. Sanchin has 3 stances in it. The first is the attention stance, or musubidachi. The heels are together. The feet are pointed out at a 45-degree angle. The second stance in Sanchin is called yoidachi, or a neutral stance. This stance is shoulder width, feet straight, hips are square, and the knees are bent inward towards one another. The third stance is called Sanchin dachi, and this is where the kata gets its name. This stance is approximately shoulder width. The length of the stance is what we call heel-toe alignment. So the heel of my front foot is on the same line as the toes of my back foot. From here, I turn my front toes inward about 30 degrees, and I bend my knees inward to one another. It's a fairly small stance, upright, and that's what makes it generally more practical. When we step in Sanchin, we simply turn our foot straight, pivoting on the ball of the foot, and then the rear foot steps through the middle, sliding on the ball, and then places back to the floor with heel-toe alignment, and then our heel turns out again to create the proper angle on the forward foot. When seen from the side, you'll see that the rear foot comes through the middle and then steps back out again in what we call a crescent-shaped step. Pivot and step. Let's now take a look at the arm position that we use in Sanchin Kata. My arms are held in front of the body. The elbows are approximately 1 fist distance away from the sternum. The arms are held as a unit, so I want to keep my hands and my arms in a direct line. Now, the elbows are pulled in, and you'll see there's a slight V shape here. So my elbows and arms are not parallel, but rather my elbows are in further than the tips of my hands. The tips of my fingers line up approximately with the tops of my shoulders. I keep my thumbs tucked across, and the angle of the hand is neither flat nor vertical, but rather in between. So again, the arms are in front of the body, 1 fist distance away. Oftentimes, students are seen with their elbows resting. This is incorrect. You want to keep the elbows out in front, pulled in, which requires a lot more strength on the part of the student. Hands as high as the shoulders, elbows pulled in, hand and wrist alignment straight, so the arm is 1 unit. So now that we've looked at how to hold the arms up in a Sanchin position, which is called Sanchin Kamae or Kamae Te, let's now look at how we use the arms in a thrusting motion. I'm standing in a left Sanchin, which means my left foot is in the forward position. So with Sanchin Kata, the rule is whichever foot is in the rear, that's the arm that we use to thrust with. So since my right foot's in the rear position, I'm going to be using my right arm. Now let's break the strike down into a variety of pieces. I first come across, down along the arm, and finish with my arm approximately in the middle of my rib cage on the wrist. 1, 2, breaking right here with the hand. Now the hand is parallel. I tell the children, if I put a marble in the palm of your hand, it shouldn't fall out. I then extend the arm. It slowly rises here. Once I've cleared my body, my elbow is no longer touching my body, I turn the strike and it rises. It comes straight out in front of the shoulder, and it's slightly under parallel with the top of the shoulder. Once again, I come across, back, out, flip, return. I'll do a few. Now let me do it with 3 pieces. 1 for the withdrawal, 1 for the thrust, and 1 for the finish. It's important when you finish the strike that you don't pull it back too far. We're simply dropping the elbow back to this starting position. So as you can see, it's a relatively small action. Ich, ni, san. This arm remains motionless. 1, 2, 3. So here you can see that I'm in a right Sanchin stance. We're going to look at the turning in this kata. Turning is typically done using the rear foot. So in this case, my left foot's in the rear position. So when I turn, the rule is whichever foot is in the rear, that's the foot that I turn with. So I lift my heel up and I turn my heel in so that it points approximately to the toes of my forward foot. Then I step across and behind, ensuring that when I plant my foot down, that I still have heel-toe alignment. Then I would continue stepping. And when I was instructed to turn again, I would lift the foot that's in the rear position, twist it so that I drop it, aiming it at my toes. This will ensure that I have the correct angle on the forward foot after I step across and behind. Towards the end of Sanchin Kata, a technique is done using both of the arms striking in front of the body. This is called morote. which means striking with both arms. So at the completion of my last single arm strike, I would withdraw both arms to the side of my body, ensuring that I keep them parallel with the floor, fingertips straight, thumbs tucked, and then just like I would with a single strike, they both extend and thrust out in front of the body. I then squeeze both hands into a tight fist, and then once I turn them over, I open them and withdraw back again. This is done 3 times. The second time, a second squeeze, turn and pull, and finally the third thrust. On the third thrust, we don't squeeze, we simply open up into hirate kamae, or open hand posture. Let me do it once again. As you pull back, think of striking in the rear. As you thrust in front, think of striking towards the front. I then squeeze. This squeeze should be symbolic of the compression used when grabbing an area of the body. So for example, someone's arm or wrist, a vital area of the body. So a lot of strength needs to be used, and then at the same time we need to shift and become very soft and relaxed in order to develop speed here. I'll demonstrate the morote with regular speed. The blocks in Sanchin Kata are probably the most challenging or difficult aspect of the kata. The block that's used is called hirate moashe uke, or open hand circle block, and it finishes with a double palm strike with your thumbs, which is called morote bushikenzuki. So this whole sequence is generally referred to as wa-uke, but it consists of 2 different techniques: the circle block and then the double palm strike. So let's review how this is done. When I do my hirate moashi uke, this is done with the arm that's over the forward foot. So I lower the arm over the body line of my forward leg. The opposite hand comes to the center of my body. This is called shote uke. This is a guide block. So if something were coming into the center, I would guide. So again, I lower in front of my forward leg, guide with the opposite hand simply to the center of my body. We call this the center line. I then come across the body, up the body line and across the brow line, back down to the hip, to the shoulder. I then thrust out in front and finish with my elbows pinched in slightly. Once again, set, block, strike, and reset. 1, 2, 3, and 4. It's important to ensure when you do the circle block that you maintain the hand a consistent distance away from the body. We call this the blocking plane. So when I do my circle block, I imagine that there's a plane in front of me, perhaps a sheet of glass, and I'm touching it with my fingers and keeping it away from my body before it comes down. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. If we look at just the circular arm, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. The opposite arm simply comes to the center, withdraws to the side of the chest, and then thrusts out. 1, 2, 3. Just as with the opening of the kata, the end of the kata has a closing protocol. This position is called the close gate. So the kata ends with my body facing the forward direction. I executed my final wa-uke, block and thrust, Now this final position is called the closed gate. I bring my forward foot back into a neutral position, and as I do that, I make a fist with my right hand, and I simply cover it with my left. My elbows are in Sanchin, and if I were to open my hands and move my arms, you'd see that the elbow posture is the same as the Sanchin Kamae. So I call that the root position of Sanchin. So again, after I strike, I slide my forward foot backwards, make a fist, and cover it. They call this the closed gate position in English. Let's look at it from the side. Here my feet come into a neutral stance, which again is called yoidachi, and I hold this position until I come to the attention stance, musubidachi, for the end of the kata, where I would then bow. The fist in Sanchin symbolizes violence, and the open hand symbolizes peace. This is a common theme that you'll see in many forms of martial arts, especially those that originate from China or through Okinawa. Violence, peace covering the violence, and this is used as a meditative position where the student practices what we call zanshin, or continued commitment. So at the end of my kata, I would hold this for perhaps 2 or 3 seconds, just to show an absolute level of vigilance and focus prior to coming to attention and bowing. So let me show you what it looks like with regular spoon. Just a few closing thoughts as we wrap up this short video about Sanchin. Sanchin is the most important kata or form in the style of Uechi Ryu Karate, and it's found in all 3 of the major forms of Okinawan Karate. Although each are performed differently, all provide tremendous value and benefits to the practitioner. Although it appears to be quite simple when you first view Sanchin, you'll find with studying it, it's very deep and complex, and it's something that you could allocate your entire career to studying. They say that Grandmaster Kanbun Uechi, when he first learned this, was taught this for 3 years before he was taught anything else. The student who practices it properly can expect to develop a tremendous level of strength and intensity, proper breathing, a very balanced and synchronized stance, as well as a strong blocking foundation. But keep practicing your Sanchin and keep enjoying the benefits. Arigatou gozaimashita.